It was my first year at university. I was living in a small town. Therefore, it was difficult for me to adapt to university life. The most difficult thing for me was being away from my family. I had never been away from them this much before. I was living in a dormitory, and at least I wasn't alone. Eric was my roommate. I got along very well with him. Although our characters were opposites, we complemented each other. Eric could easily make friends with everyone and adapt to any environment. I was the exact opposite, an introvert, quiet, and calm person. Eric and I got along very well. Sometimes we would watch movies in our room, and sometimes we would study. Our room was a little old and small, but it did the job. Because if I had rented a separate house, I would have had a hard time financially. Thanks to Eric, I started to get used to the environment. One evening, Eric came to me. He said there was a party on the 3rd floor and that he would attend the party. He wanted me to attend. It will be a change for you too. Besides, you will get used to the university environment faster, he said. But I wasn't feeling well, so I told Eric that I would join him another time. Eric said, "I won't be late too long. I'm going to the party. Don't worry, I'll be back early," and left. I read a book for a while and watched a video on my phone. It was almost 10 o'clock in the evening. I was feeling sleepy, but Eric still hadn't come back. I fell asleep after looking at my phone for a while. I woke up to a voice coming from the hallway. When I looked under the door in a daze, I saw a shadow. It had to be Eric. "Where did you stay?" "I thought you were going to come back early," I called out, but no one answered. I heard footsteps walking away in the hallway. I didn't pay much attention, because there was always a sound in the dormitory. The sound of talking, the sound of a phone, but I couldn't fall asleep again. I was worried about Eric. I sent him a message. It's been 15 minutes and he still hasn't seen my message. I decided to go to where Eric was. I was worried about him. When I went out into the hallway, I felt fear. Since the dormitory building was very old, the lighting was inadequate. In most places, there was no lighting at all. Such things were normal in such old places, so I didn't pay much attention. I went up to the 3rd floor, but there was no sign of a party. I tried to go into a few rooms, but they were all closed. Finally, I found the room Eric described. The door was slightly open, but it was dark inside. I could only see a desk light on. I called out, "Eric?" But no one answered. I was very worried about him. There was no sign of a party here. I didn't even think there was a student staying here because it was so quiet. I went in scared. I tried to turn on the light, but it wasn't working. At that moment, I saw that there was a phone on the ground. When I got closer, I realized it was Eric's. When I looked at the phone, I noticed a message. The message said, "Don't look back." Suddenly, the door of the room closed. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't open the door. I thought Eric and his friends were playing a prank on me. "It's not a funny joke at all, guys," I called out, but no one answered. I was starting to get scared. My heart was beating like crazy. At that moment, I heard a sound like breathing from inside the room. At that moment, I began to understand how serious the situation was. When I looked back, I saw a shadow moving in the corner of the room. I was about to faint with fear. I started to scream and pound on the door. I was screaming, "Help me! Get me out of here!" At the same time, I was trying to understand what that shadow was. I was in fear. The desk lamp was dimly lighting the room. I couldn't see what the shadow in the room was or what it looked like exactly. The shadow was getting closer and closer to me. I continued to pound on the door and shout. At that moment, the door suddenly opened. A few people came in. They asked me if I was okay. I told them that I couldn't find Eric, and I said he told me he was going to a party on this floor. I was shaking with fear. "There's someone inside," I said. At that moment, one of my friends turned on the light. When I tried to turn on the light, it wouldn't turn on, no matter how hard I tried. It was obvious that something was wrong. When we looked in the room, there was no one. The strange thing was that Eric didn't have a phone either. My friends said that there were no parties in the dorm today. They said that partying in the dormitory is forbidden. We all searched for Eric for an hour, but we couldn't find him. Finally, we decided to call the police. The police found Eric's phone signal in the woods beyond the dormitory building, but there was no sign of him. It's been exactly 7 years since this incident happened, but Eric has never been found. I wonder about him and miss him so much. The shadow I saw in the room that night still haunts my dreams. I never found out what it was. I don't think I want to find out. My friend Abby and I decided to move into a separate house during our last year of university. When we were living in a dorm, we couldn't do anything we wanted. Our check-in and check-out times were set, but now there was nothing to restrict us. We would go to school, and then we were free to do whatever we wanted. After school that day, Abby and I went shopping. Our plan was to get a few drinks and some chips and watch a movie together at night. It was Friday, and since there was no school the next day, we would be able to watch movies and have fun until late at night. When we got home, we had a quick dinner, took a shower, and sat in front of the TV. We were thinking of watching a horror movie on Netflix. While watching the movie, I understood better how right a decision it was to move to a separate house. There were no strict rules. We set the rules ourselves. We watched 2 horror movies in a row, chatted with Abby, scared each other while watching the movies, and had a lot of fun. It was 3 a.m. We were very tired, so we decided to go to sleep. Abby and I got along very well. Even though our house was a duplex, we were sharing the same room. I woke up to Abby's voice. "There's someone in the house. I hear footsteps," she whispered in my ear. After we got over the shock of the incident, we started listening to the sounds quietly. We sat there for about 5 minutes without moving. Although I didn't want to show it to Abby, I was very scared. I was the bravest among us, and I didn't want to lose this characteristic. And I didn't want to be made fun of if the sounds Abby heard were wrong. There was no sound. I said, "Let's go to sleep." But at that moment, I clearly heard footsteps coming from inside the house. I quietly told Abby to call the police. When I stood up, Abby hugged me in fear and said, "Where are you going? Please don't leave me alone here." I told her that I wasn't going anywhere, to call the police quickly, close the door, and I would be back. I tiptoed silently, closed the door, and locked it. I was standing in front of the door, listening to the sounds coming from inside the house. Whoever was in our house must have been on the stairs right now, because the stairs in our house were a little old and creaky. Our bedroom was upstairs, so we had nowhere to run. Abby and I hugged each other and listened to the sounds coming from inside the house. The voices were getting closer. I guess they were upstairs right now because we could clearly hear their footsteps. The doorknob of our room started to move slowly. I was praying to God, please don't let him know we were inside. When the door wouldn't open, I thought he would leave, but he wouldn't leave. He kept trying to open the door. At that moment, I heard sirens coming from outside. Abby shouted excitedly, "The police are here!" I didn't know what to do at that moment because I was scared. I covered Abby's mouth with my hand, but whoever was in our house was in front of our door. It was impossible not to hear Abby's voice. While we were waiting in fear to see what the person in our house would do, the voices suddenly stopped, as if nothing had happened. I guess he ran away when he heard the sirens. When the police shouted, "You're safe," we opened the door in fear and ran towards them. The police searched the whole house, and about 10 minutes later, they found a man hiding in the closet upstairs. At that moment, Abby and I locked eyes. We were both very scared. We thought that the man had run away. The police took the man to the police station, and we increased our security measures after that. We installed an alarm system in the house, and most importantly, we learned to lock our doors. No matter how safe you feel, make sure you lock your door. You never know what might happen to you.